Want to welcome Shenan to Mystery School for this webinar today, because we were talking a little bit before starting, and I was saying, he is so much like the poster child for transformation. And if you can hear what Shenan is going to share with us, you'll be able to see that transformation is possible for everyone, because his transformation happened at such a huge degree, you might say, from where he is now. So I'm just going to give you a little background how Shenan, how I discovered him, quite by accident, like how these things happen, right? He wound up on a panel discussion about alleviating or diminishing stress during this pandemic when stress levels are so high. And I just thought, well, nice person. He's a three principles coach, a life coach. Well, I don't know, a few weeks later, maybe a month later, I'm talking to someone who's in our book club. I'm sure many of you know the name, Richard Mayer. And Richard's helping me with my Instagram channel. And I'm pointing out people I'm really enjoying reading. Shenan was one. And so Richard says to me, well, do you know his story? And I said, yeah, he's a life coach. And then he said, Richard said to me that, well, before that, he's actually a school dropout, and he was part of a gang. I said, I thought Richard was just kidding with me. That can't be true. That's impossible. This person probably went to prep school, and he's probably an Ivy League graduate. The way he writes and presents himself, come on. Well, no. So Shenan is here to tell the real story. And that's it. I'm not going to say any more yet, but I just one thing, which is we're going to open it up for Q&A. Like, people on this webinar are hidden now, but we'll let you all in for any questions before we end. Okay, Shenan, so tell us from the beginning.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this, and I really enjoy talking to you in the little interactions we've had since you invited me on the panel of the other show. So thank you. I'm happy to be here. And I'm a little differently excited, even though I've shared my story so many times in different formats and platforms. And I'm differently excited because it is in the context of the three principles and how that has played a role in how I seen my past, how I got into it, why I got into it. Like, this whole explanation was opened up for me exploring the principles and how everything occurred, but I got it through insight instead of trying to get there, instead of trying to figure out, because every time I tried to figure out, the best I had was an assumption that sort of made sense, but it wasn't true. Like, the truth wasn't there about why anybody would get into what I did. And the principles explained it so well. So, I mean, if you're saying start from the beginning, I don't know exactly where to, but I will. Okay, here's where I think it would make sense. So the beginning for me, given what we're talking about, was coming to Canada when I was 11 years of age. I was born in Kenya and was raised there. My entire family is born in Kenya, and my parents sort of seen that Canada would give their children a better life. So they made the effort to bring me and my older brother to Canada because, of course, Kenya is a third world country. And the healthcare there and the safety and the school system, it's not as good as Canada. So we came to Vancouver. I was age 11, and I faced a lot of bullying from the start. You know, for my skin color, for what I wore, how I spoke, everything was different. And facing this culture shock, I was being bullied. And I didn't know why I was being bullied. I just could not expect that, because in Kenya, I never faced anything like that. I didn't even know what it was really. And and I didn't know how to react to it. And after being frustrated so much about it and it not changing, all this aggression came out, and I started acting with aggression, fighting the bullies back and getting into fights and so on. And that led, one thing led to another. I started hanging out with kids that were also bullied, but also aggressive. Started skipping school a lot because every time I went to school, I was bullied. And when I'm skipping school, obviously, you're getting into trouble when you're skipping school as a 12 and 13-year-old. So between age 11 and 13 was this sort of thing that happened that led me into this path of skipping school, getting into drugs, getting into fights, and so on, right? 13 is grade 8. Now, given the context of the principles, I, for the longest time, till I think about the age 32 or 33, could not figure out why I got into drugs and gangs, because everyone got bullied to some degree, but everyone reacted differently, right? And my story was, because I got bullied, I got into this world of drugs and gangs. And I went with that story because that's what made sense to me, until I started to see that, no, everyone got bullied. How come everyone's not in drugs and gangs? And the principles explained that, no, you were not reacting to getting bullied. You were reacting to the interpretation that thought was creating. And that's what made sense. And then, people who got bullied had different interpretations, and they had different thought created realities inside of them that they were reacting. So some people committed suicide. Some people didn't care that they were getting bullied. They weren't interested. They laughed at it. Some people got into drugs and gangs. Some people fought back. So, everyone had a different reality, same event. So the principles helped me understand why I got into that, because before that, I didn't understand. I thought it was, the event of bullying and my lack of education, my lack of something, my lack of understanding the world. And I shamed myself for it, oh, you idiot, you shouldn't have done that. Look what you did for all these years. And then the principles allowed me to see, no, it was thought, the lack of understanding of thought and the misuse of thought, of this beautiful creative gift, leads people down astray roads. And as soon as I was able to see not just my thinking, but the energy of the principle of thought that creates thinking worlds, I sort of self-corrected. I fell back into myself. I fell in love with myself again, instead of trying to justify why I went into that life and got out and all these other things. It was just so natural to go, oh, I'm still fresh here and now. And all of that was a reaction to my thinking, because I didn't understand it, and that's okay. So this level of innocence returned, this level of sensitivity to life returned, this love for life returned, the sense of being alive returned. And maybe that's why, when you see me, you go, no, that can't be possible that he was in gangs and drugs, because I started accepting that innocence and sensitivity back to life. Oh, you're muted, Lori.
Yeah. That's just so remarkable, to me that. So what would you say, we talk about, like, there are sometimes defining moments in life where, boom, we see something, and some behavior we wanted to get rid of. We didn't know how to do it because it's not a doing. We've come to find out through the principles, it's an understanding how we work. But most of us, myself included, like when I was trying to quit smoking when in my 20s, and it wasn't until I literally had such a change in consciousness. Like I woke up one morning and I just knew I'm not a smoker. What am I doing? And that was the end of it. I mean, and that's weird because I had tried to quit smoking a million times before that. And I know plenty of people who try to quit smoking a million times. And, but this was such an absolute break. I never had another urge. And people just don't realize that that's what happens, that when you really have a shift in consciousness, it is over. Whatever it was that you're trying to eliminate is absolutely over.
Yeah.
So what was it for you, Shenan? What was it that allowed you to realize that who you really were?
Well, I got out of that world around 2007. All right. So there was some defining moments in my physical reality that sort of shook me up. And I ran into the principles in 2015. So between 2007 and 15, even though I was out of that world wasn't out of me, if that makes sense. Still trying to make sense of the whole thing. So in my physical reality, there was two things, right? When I was 18, my best friend was shot dead, which threw me in for a real spin. Depression and just drinking and drugs and all of it, trying to numb all the things that were, all the feelings that were in me that I didn't understand, that were too intense, so on and so forth, right? And even though people we all experiment with drugs a little bit when we're growing up. It's different when you're numbed from something and, it's the intensity is there and then you sort of fall into drugs and alcohol, not as an experiment anymore. So that was sort of the case with me. And I got more involved in that gang-related world. And then when I was age 23, my parents' house was shot up while they were inside. And I don't know how till this day, nobody was injured. There was 6 shots fired in the home and they were inside. But that really shook me up, that went, holy cow, like where's my life come to that I have brought this home? I mean, they brought me here to have a better life. Here's what I brought to their home. It was quite shameful. But I started to want to change my life because of that, because I started to realize that I am not this person, yet this is the life I've created. And it is sort of, I've landed here because I have put on a mask to be liked somewhere along the way. Right. And all of this is hindsight. Like at that time, I just couldn't make sense of anything. I was simply trying to get out of that world. And that was the thing, realizing that I had put on a mask way back when, age 11 and 12, when I wanted to be liked because I wasn't liked, because I was being bullied. So I translated that as, there's something unlikable about you. So what should I do that people do like? Oh, I get into fights. Some people seem to like that. Okay, this is what I'll do. And then move into that world, right? So all of this occurring without the sense of it in my mind. And then when I started to, when I was out of that world and I tried to make sense of everything, I just ran into so many things, so much information, right? Here's how emotions work. Here's how you define your emotions. Here's how you describe them. And fear is this, and shame is that, and guilt is up here, and doubt is up more, and right? Happiness is the highest, and fear is the lowest, and all this charts. And it just put in so much information in my head. Now, through that, if I followed that path, which I did, I started to see through that information of theoretical Freudian psychology that I was experiencing mostly shame and guilt, right? Because I was able to define what I'm feeling now. And I went to the doctors because I was having nightmares and low self-esteem and all the other things that I was experiencing out of that life. And he pretty much said, you know, you've got PTSD now, because I mean, if you live in a world of gang-related activity, you're going to come up with something. So I thought I was broken at some point, right? Like I remember walking out of the doctor's office thinking, oh man, look what you've created with your psychology now. You're half broken. What are you going to do? The best you can do is start trying to find out how to manage this, because that's the best you got. And so I try to take in more information of emotions and, you know, which emotion and how to manage it, and which emotion and how to manage it. And I found myself that I couldn't really do much more than that with my day, right? I would go to work, or whatever job I had, whatever things I had to do, I would do that, and then half my energy would be spent trying to figure out what kind of emotion I'm feeling and how to manage it. So I have no energy to move forward. I'm in management mode now. And then when I ran into the principles, it shook me up. You know, it kind of pulled the rug underneath from me. And I remember one of the first few times when I had an actual insight, because I was introduced to the principles and I was sort of trying to make sense of what this is, because it was so different than all the information I had gathered. But I wouldn't have experiential insights. I would just kind of take it in intellectually. And when I had my experiential insights, the first few, I was in the fits of laughter and crying, because I've seen that there's nothing to figure out in terms of emotions, right? Like there's just, it doesn't make sense. Now, one of my favorite insights that really hit home and opened things up, and my energy came back and my zest for life came back, was to see that every time I describe an emotion, I'm repressing it. That's a form of repressing. I'm allowing it to reside and stay and all the other things, pin it on things, project it on whatever story is coming up. But if I just felt it and didn't describe it, that's it. I've got a fuller experience of it. It would leave faster, and I would be more of a clear vessel, instead of what is this I'm feeling? Is it fear, or is it doubt this time? Is it shame, or is it guilt this time? Where's that chart? Let's pull it out and describe, you know. Instead of that, I would just feel it. But what didn't allow me to feel it is the lack of understanding of what it is. Because without the understanding of what it was, I was scared of it. I was scared of the feeling. And with the understanding of, no, emotion is just a cluster of thought making its way through you, because that's how it works. Oh, then I allowed, you know, for the feeling to happen. No descriptions needed, and allow it to pass. And of course, once in a while, my mind comes in and goes, no, we have to describe this. Remember all this stuff you've gathered. And you get caught up once in a while. But besides that, that's what it is. It just occurs and leaves. And that itself, the simplicity of it, was everything. You know, that brought me back to life. That brought me back to the energy, and my aspirations came back, and all this other stuff. Like the work I do now as a coach and a consultant, it takes energy to be invested into other people's world and help them. And I wouldn't even dream of that, because I didn't have the energy. I was too busy trying to figure out my PTSD and my emotions and whatnot, and just checked out of life. So this is what it allowed for that to occur more, you know. I was a coach before I ran into the three principles, but with the understanding of the principles, things became so much more integrated. You know, I took on a lot less. I figured out a lot less. I participated a lot more. I connected a lot more. I was present a lot more, and things became much more lighthearted.
Yeah, more lighthearted and more real and more down to earth. And yeah, because that's what you do as a coach, is connect with people, and you just connect with their health,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. That's a good point too. When I didn't have my health figured out, I was quick to make everyone else's misunderstanding very serious, and you got to figure this out, man. Let's help you do that. And now it's like you just see the health and you speak to that, and that starts to surface up within them, and they get their own understanding. And it's the understanding. Um, I'm like just continuing to be a student of the understanding and going deeper there allows for it to show up in whatever ways it wants to show up, instead of me trying to do the thing or me trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like an automatic hit as opposed to, just tying ourselves up in knots, trying to figure it out, because it's not something, that's brain activity figuring things out.
Yeah,
And what makes shifts is seeing. I love how Sid will, in his writings, write the word seeing in all capital letters. It's just seeing how we operate, that we're operating according to what thoughts we're getting. And if you don't know any better, you're going to follow whatever thought you get. That's what I
right.
did. That's what my clients do. I mean, because what else is there but our own thinking? But when you realize, no, there's a way to tell when you're using your ability to think in your favor or against yourself. And we're designed so amazingly that we can feel how we think. So the feelings you got, I'm going to guess here, the feelings that you would get when you were in this gang related activities versus the feelings you get now, it's easy to decipher. Those
Absolutely.
feelings
Yeah.
were telling you all along, they were telling you, if you knew the direction to look in, those feelings were telling you, get out alive while you still can, right? Because they had to be like, I don't know, could you describe the difference?
Well, when I was in that world, I was more in these very lower vibrations of always alert, always cautious, always like the world is after you, people are after you. So there's a feeling of hopelessness there that you're just trying to manage, right? And after the principles, after seeing like what wisdom is and feeling this sense of genuine hope, right? I talk about that quite often nowadays, because that's been one of my big insights, is to see that hope on its own as a feeling, without being hopeful for anything, just feeling hope is a really nice, deep feeling. It doesn't have to be about something. And I didn't allow myself to feel that, because I always thought it's about something. And if there's not an about, then you can't really feel it. And so if it would come up, I would reject it. But I think that is hope and gratitude, like genuine feeling, that sense of gratitude, not for anything, not for life, not for things, just feeling gratitude opens us up to see more. It expands me and my consciousness, and that moves me forward. It's not the thing it's projected on that I have to be hopeful for. So the biggest difference is the simplicity of having those deep feelings now versus not understanding them before, so not allowing them, and still choosing to reside in those um, tight feelings because I thought that that's going to help me, right? That's going to help me stay alert. That's going to help me stay alive. When it just wasn't true. It actually just perpetuated the same life. because I was following the same feelings.
And stressful. Boy, oh boy, the pressure to be alert all the time. You never know when somebody's going to do harm to you. Yeah, scary. Before we started the webinar, we were talking about faith. And I loved what you said about, can you say that again for people listening?
About faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that, and I mentioned this before we started, was one of the most beautiful discoveries that allowed me to see the innocence behind what I was doing and why I got into it, allowed me to forgive myself fully, not as a method, as a saying, forgive yourself so you can move forward, versus genuinely just forgiving yourself, was to see thought for what it is, to see the principle of thought creating reality. And the second one was to get a glimpse of mind. And I think that's what you're pointing to, that we were talking about, the faith, is to see that there is a loving intelligence behind it all, and that there is nothing inside of me that I have to be scared of that occurs. And I think that's one of the things that threw me in a fit of laughter, because I was like, oh my God, I've been scared of myself the whole time. When it doesn't work that way. Like, it's one of those embarrassing insights you get, it's like, God, how can I not see this? This is quite embarrassing what I've done with my life because of that. But that glimpse of mind is, that allows for relying on it, understanding it, seeing it, allows us to rely on that, no matter what's occurring in the mind, and no matter what low feelings are available. You rely on mind and it takes care of you.
That's so true. Before I was introduced to the principles, I had a very similar experience where it never occurred to me that there was something other than myself to running the show here. And what a relief when I realized that it's not all up to me. Who I wind up connecting with, who I meet in life, with, what job I wind up with, what man I wind up with. That's not all up to me to wind up with the right person or the right thing or the right job. Life delivers things and people to us. This is how I've come to see it. And we know we can have faith in our ability to ascertain what's good for us and what's not good for us.
Yeah, I love that.
It's amazing, right? That common sense is so available, that wisdom that you speak about, wisdom coming from, the intelligence of the universe, really. I mean, we work the same way that the rest of nature works.
Yeah.
Kind of plugged in.
Yeah, and seeing the connectedness of it, it takes us out of our personalizing every experience and personalizing everything that happens. And that feeling of expansion, that there is, that this is true, that there is something there that we all share that takes care of it all. And so if it gets a little heavy, just step back. Don't have to figure it out.
Right. Step back, and all we have to do is get quieting the mind. And figuring it out is the opposite of quieting the mind.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So I wonder if people have questions. Should we, did you want to say something else before we open things up and let people show themselves? And
no, let's do that. Let's chat with everyone else, see what questions come up, if any.
Yeah. So, I mean, people can either send us a chat or you can unhide yourself and just come on and talk to us. Question from Alan. What insights have you had working with others as a coach with wisdom?
What insights have I had working with others as a coach with wisdom? Well, I think the most obvious one is to not have to see their health and to not have to figure it out with them or have them figure it out. That's been the biggest one, I would say. That's a continuously giving one, and no matter how compelling the story is that I am screwed up, seeing the health in that person and leading them back to that continuously, that's been the biggest one for sure. And continuous. And the stories can get pretty sophisticated and very, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, maybe this guy is right. And it's like, no, that's thought. Don't fall for it. Yeah. It's allowed me to work with an array of people I would have never imagined, right? So from people in trauma to youth at risk that I do a lot of work with, business owners, other coaches. That's been one of the biggest blessings, is to see that everything is coming from one thing. So it doesn't matter what is projected, what the visible part is, when it's coming from just one thing. So as a quick example, I'm working with this one youth because I speak at schools now and share my story there, and obviously bring in the principles in whatever speeches I do. So I write my email usually on the board behind me because, kids don't want to ask questions in front of their peers, so they can email me after. And so this one kid emailed me, this was a couple of years ago now, 17-year-old emails me, we get into a conversation, and he has had a concussion. He's a boxer. So he had a concussion sparring somebody, and the concussion went to depression and anxiety, and he started seeing psychologists and therapists. And he was not being helped. He was like, I've been seeing people and I quit boxing and I'm just so depressed and I'm on pills and nothing would help. And I started working with him. Just, I told him, continue doing whatever you're doing, but just show up on our calls. I'm willing to just work with you, chat for an hour a week. So within 3 months, he started to become much more happy. And he changed his hair, he got a girlfriend, he joined boxing again, like he became integrated with life again because he started to understand a little bit of what thought is. And what was really funny was his friend was bedridden, another 17-year-old, 18-year-old, bedridden, panic attacks, ambulance coming to his house every few days, doesn't go to school, his friends have to bring the work to him home, doesn't go out to play. And he's the friend that I'm working with is telling him, you got to talk to Shenan. And the other guy's like, no, I've tried everything, nothing really works, right? Really hopeless. Just, again, on pills, psychiatrists, therapists, psychologists, seen them all. And then he's seen his friend changing. He's like, how come you're happier and you're joining boxing again? So the guy goes, talk to Shenan, right? And so I talked to him. Finally, the guy goes, okay, fine, I'll try it. Like, really, like, fine, I'll try it. No hope whatsoever. And then we block out an hour. And this is one of my favorite stories, because we block out an hour. And I tell him, he tells me what he's into. And he's really like, I don't know, whatever. I guess I'll listen to you. So I told him, I remember what occurred to me in the moment to say is, I'm just going to share something with you, but I don't know if it's going to change. So you might just, be flatlined, but don't expect me to give you any techniques. Well, let me just share something with you. And if something occurs to you, great. If not, we'll talk again next week. And we block out an hour, and in 25 minutes, he tells me, oh my God, I got to go. I got to get off the call. You've just said something. I've got to go. And I didn't know if I offended him or not, or helped him. So I was like, what happened? And he wouldn't tell me. He just had to go from the call. And then he texted me later, 2 days later, and he told me all of my anxiety is gone. I don't know what you've done and what you've said, but all of it is evaporated. Now I'm still working with these two kids. This guy is going back to school. He's got a job. He's in boxing. Everything has changed. He stopped taking his pills. He's back to life. And all I shared with him is some context of what my understanding of thought was, very, very basic stuff. So I share that story because that's the power of the principles that occurs in the moment, that we just don't know what's going to happen. And I felt a really incredible sense of joy, that kind of contribution is available in somebody's life, because I don't know if he will end up like old Shenan if it gets too heavy for him, right? And just
Yeah.
with this understanding, he's able to see himself through it, come back to life to it.
Must be so fulfilling for you.
Yeah, that's exactly the word. It is very fulfilling. It's
Yeah.
extremely fulfilling to see that kind of possibility is available, when before the understanding that would be extremely difficult to even wish for.
Yeah, and it's great how you don't take it personally. And some people catch on sooner than others, but you just know that it's there for everyone to catch on, to elevate wherever they're at. They can elevate themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will be honest, when that happened and he told me that it was 25 minutes, I did kind of sit back and went, damn, I'm good, And then I realized, no, it's not me. Come back down to earth, Shenan.
Yeah.
But yeah, that did happen.
But it's the you that's the same in him, that's the same in everyone. That we can be in awe of. And that's not ego. That's being in awe of the possibility for all people. That, just blows my mind that people really have it in them, not as their personal selves, but as unlimited intelligence.
As part of where it comes from, and having to be, to sink into that more. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. So that was a great question, Alan. Hoping that answered, yeah?
Yeah, thank you, Shenan. That was so affirming. That was so affirming. I've worked with mental patients and federally mandated drug kings, and lots of different people. And the what seems to work is seeing their health, and when they're in your face, that's harder sometimes than other times. But the power of what you're talking about and having that be affirmed by you is really wonderful. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you, Alan. Actually, I wanted to say earlier, it's really good to see you. You came on my group and did a webinar a few months ago with Silas, remember? And I read your book, and it was a really powerful book. So I wanted to thank you for that as well.
Oh my gosh. I feel like a guy that has come out from underneath a rock after decades of being under a rock. So, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm gonna mute now. Thank you.
What other questions? Who else has a question or comment? From Livy. Let's see. How can you maintain the faith and hope with all of the negativity in our world? Oh, good question, Libby. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Did you get that, Shenan? How can you maintain the
did.
faith and hope with all the negativity in our world or negative distractions within our own lives? Good question.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if I would be qualified to answer that question, but I'll give it a shot by saying, for me, how I do it is I have come to see that every single opinion, every single interpretation, every single agreement or disagreement is made of thought. And the more I can see that, the more lightly I can take anything anybody says about anything else. So that's the one thing that keeps me going. And it's not about keeping me going because I want to keep going, but it keeps me seeing things as, oh, well, that's created by thought. There's not much to worry about it. And that's created by thought, and that's not much to worry about. But the second part to that is understanding on a deeper level than I did before that if it is created by thought, it's not going to last, because the nature of thought is that it fades. The intensity varies. So, looking at what's going on in the world in terms of how people are reacting to COVID from the beginning to now, how people are reacting to the US elections that are going on. In my conversations with anybody that's even slightly into that, I see that their intensity of whatever they're looking at changes. With some kind of news coming on that's fresh, their intensity is high, their reactions are there. 2 days later, they're a little bit mellow. And if we can see why that's happening, because thought changes, is the simplest answer to me. We take it more lightly. We start looking at things that doesn't change. Like for me, awareness doesn't change. That ability to think instead of the content of thinking, the ability doesn't change. I want to put my chips on the ability instead of the content. And the more I do that, the less I get concerned about all the negatives and positives that are passing through. And I think opinions is a big one. Everyone really wants to fight for their opinion. I stopped fighting for mine when I seen they were thought created. Yeah, so.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. So true, isn't it? But I love that, putting your chips on the ability to think and the ability to be aware, not the content. Because the content shifts and changes. What we think about is always changing unless we're, grabbing onto it.
Yeah, unless we take it to be true and start acting on it.
Richard, I
Just
see
to
your hand.
build on Shenan's sharing here is that, Sid talked a lot about the state of no thought, and that is our innate state, that our existence is really in that pure state of no thought. But at the same time, because he talked about duality, that both form and formless are examples of a duality that we think exists, but in reality it doesn't. We're one and the same. So even that state of mind that allows us to realize thought, but also allows us to realize thoughtlessness, it's one and the same. And I mean, tapping into that is amazing, because that allows one to exist in the moment, where the stream of thought is so infinitesimally small, but it's happening to that point where it literally is perceived as a state of no thought. I love that, because that's truly where not just about, that's where everything exists. And like you, Shenan, I had to eventually get to a point where I had to stop saying I don't know or I can't explain, because I can. And again, it's not possessing it on an intellectual level, it's knowing it on a spiritual level.
And everybody has that.
Mhm.
Everybody has that. You know, it's not a religion, or we're not talking about a religion. It's just a sense that, you know, it's hard to even put into words, that there's something greater within us as there is something greater outside of us that we can depend upon. If we get out of the way, we get out of the way, you know, with our own wacky thinking. Who else has a question or comment?
This too shall pass, Lynn says. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. 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 Perfect design. We're really designed so perfectly. If people only knew, people only realized. I know, Richard, you talk about waking up, you know, as people wake up to this understanding that life is happening from inside of us. What do you do when you're triggered? I like that.
That's a great question. For me, it's been extremely fascinating to watch my triggers. And sometimes I don't see them till after, because, you know, you get triggered and you react in whatever way you react, and you don't think you're reacting to a trigger because you think it's real, and so on. And that's one thing. But the second one is to see, I'm trying to get better every day to see how my feeling level changes so differently, so fast. Because for me, that's a signal of being triggered. You know, I'm nice, calm, quiet, and then boom, I'm angry all of a sudden, or I'm doubtful all of a sudden, or I'm scared all of a sudden. And if I can get better at seeing that, then I know that I'm being triggered, and I'll still feel it. I still get into it, but I just don't react to it much. I don't act on it. That's what I'm playing with right now. But besides that, if I don't see it, then I react and I forgive myself later. Yeah.
And then do you say to whoever, oh, I was a stupid man, wasn't I? It's like, if you read that chapter in The Secret of Love, Tom Kelly has this thing with his wife where if he, you know, loses it or gets caught up in a bunch of thinking or gets triggered and he realizes it, he goes to her and he says, oh, I was a stupid man, wasn't I? It's a funny
I think that's a
story.
really important part. Yeah,
Yeah.
it helps a lot to realize that and share what you realized after, to if you reacted to a person.
Yeah. We all go there. We all go into
Yeah.
our stupid thinking from time to time. So here's another question. Could you speak about the low hum of thoughts? Whoops, I just lost it. It was flashing and then I lost it. Could you speak about the low hum of thoughts that we may not be aware of, but produce a feeling? Good question.
Mm. Yeah. So for me, what I've come to see about the feeling, and like I was just mentioning to the question before this, is that level of feeling, the quality of feeling rather, maybe accurately said more, the quality of feeling that I have going on inside of me is the only way to tell what kind of thinking I'm doing. So if it is a heavy thinking, low, maybe a little bit unconscious thinking, the feeling is what I pay attention to mostly. And if I can accept the feeling and not fall for the description that my mind is trying to give me, that's been super, super insightful for me. Is because in our world, what I see is that we live in such a world of describing everything, you know, and describing a feeling, I think is, in my opinion, one of the worst mistakes of mankind. Because when you describe a feeling, you're keeping it around. I was telling Lori before we started, I think it's a very sophisticated form of repressing feelings, is describing them. So I want to feel the feeling, whatever it is, and I don't want to describe it. And I have a really, if I can share a really short story on this, of how this was so insightful for me, was I had this insight January 2019, right? All of a sudden I said, oh my God, descriptions of feelings is the most pointless thing in the world. You got to feel them and let them be. You don't need to describe them. And I didn't know, but I was opened up and expanded by this insight quite a bit in January 2019. And then in April 19th, 2019, one of my really good friends passed away, all of a sudden in a car crash. And as you know, everyone has experienced somebody dying in their life, we never know how we're going to react. Sometimes we're pretty grounded and sometimes it's really hits us, right? And so this one hit me, and I remember being in bed for a week. I was extremely sad and just crying and just, you know, not with it. I was not in life. I was I was hurt pretty bad. And I remember at that time when I was going through that, I was feeling things and my mind would go, what are you feeling? This is really intense. If you describe it, you know, it'll be less intense. But because of the insight I had just a couple of months ago, I wouldn't describe it. I would literally have it sit within me, and the intensity was quite strong. But because I realized earlier that there's no description needed, it's made of the thinking, it doesn't matter what the thinking is, just feel it. It was quite intense, but it lasted about 2 weeks. And what I mean by that is 2 weeks later, literally, I was over my friend's death. I was left with beautiful memories, no sadness around. I was cleared up. And I would attribute that to me not describing feelings. Like when my best friend died when I was 18, it took me 13 years to get over that. You know, it was heavy carrying for 13 years. So I share that because that to me is an illustration of checking into our feelings and not trying to make such a big deal out of them, right? Not personalizing an emotional experience. I mean, if it's true that emotions within us are created by the principle of thought and nothing else, then why would I want to personalize them? Why would I want to take it on as my own? Why would I want to dwell and indulge in that? If I'm doing that unconsciously, no problem. But I would like to understand more that that's not the case. So I don't personalize it, so I can experience it more and I can be cleared out easier, faster.
So true. By describing feelings, we're really making something of them. We're thinking about our own thinking.
Yes,
Making
exactly.
it a thing. Like you say, personalizing it. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it?
I was just going to say that helped, Rebecca. Great. I'm glad it did. Thank you. Yeah, that's been extremely, extremely insightful. I can't overemphasize the fact that not describing a feeling is a more integrated experience with an emotion, not less.
Right. It's being human. Right. It's the feeling of being a human, having feelings and emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, and the misunderstanding I was trapped in for so long was, if you don't describe it and you don't express it, then you're bypassing that. You're bypassing the emotions. You're downplaying it. But I see that that's not true, because expression is unnecessary. I mean, you can express it if you want, but it's not you express it to get rid of it or to change it. Right? I think I had much deeper, more intense experiences of joy and anxiety when I was to understand that it's a cluster of thinking that's making its way through me. Literally, that's all that's going on. I don't have to glamorize it. I don't have to talk about how, I don't have to be so vulnerable because I'm talking about my feelings, because this is really hard for me, but here I am expressing myself. I think it's much more courageous to sink yourself into it, feel it, and come out more clear.
Yeah.
Come out more grounded, more perspective, more grounded.
Yeah, and I think that's part of faith also, having faith that whatever you're feeling is completely appropriate in that moment.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to do with it. Except if you're
Right.
feeling love, you want to share your love, That makes sense. But if you're feeling anger, it doesn't make sense to share your anger, because that's your personal thinking creating that anger.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Love is not an emotion, right? That comes through. I find myself in more perspective with love leading the way, but with so much less perspective if it's an emotion that I'm trying to make sense of or express.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. How about some other questions? Anything else? Hi, Peg. We're in question mode. I don't know if you were able to hear. Do you have
Oh,
any
yes,
question or comment or?
I've been hearing everything, and I really appreciate what I've heard. I want to hear Shenan talk about the are the feelings that we like something to be like, I don't know, I'm hearing that feelings are all bad or something, but I have, after working with Shenan, I have a lot more time spent in a sense of wonder and joy in whatever task I'm doing at the moment. And I wonder if those then aren't feelings, but rather a state of being. Or if you have feelings like when you love someone, how do we not grasp onto that? Is that all made up? Or, yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Yeah, so I'm glad you pointed that out, because that's the last thing I want, is to be sounding like feelings are bad, because we're talking about getting away from feelings so much. And I find that that's common language, and can be common language in some 3P communities, because everyone's trying to get away from feelings for the most part. But I think so, as I said earlier, I think using feelings as a guide to what's going on in my mind, like that's golden. I want to stay there, right? So if I'm feeling wonder, joy, a sense of hope or gratitude, then for me, that's pointing to the quality of thinking that's happening in my mind. And that's enough information. Like I want to continue because it feels good. It feels light. It feels, like you said, in a state of wonder. And if I'm feeling really low, anger, fear, whatever other made up descriptions we have, then that's pointing to the quality of thinking that's going on in my mind at that moment. And obviously that doesn't feel good. It feels uncomfortable. I would want to recognize that and leave it alone. And that's it. Like, to me, that's so far, in my understanding, secret of life. You know, you feel bad, don't continue. You feel good, continue. And if we can stay there, you know, things get simpler, and we're like you said, we have more energy and participation with life, because we're not trying to figure it all out.
A saying, Dr. George Pransky has this saying, let's see if I can remember it. I think it's perfect for this. He would say, the trick to life is to be grateful for your highs and graceful with your lows.
Mm.
Isn't that great? You know, it kind of sums it all up, doesn't it? That, and the other thing that also that came to my mind about this was, you know, Sid's quote about, if people could just be okay with their feelings and not be concerned about their feelings, what a different world we live in. But people think that they have to act out their feelings, or they have to, you know, let the other person know how they're feeling. And that doesn't land very well on the other person. So there's a lot of misunderstanding in the world about how to most efficiently use our design.
I know, Lori, just speaking on my own, from my own experience, the idea of, if I'm not seeing straight, is being aware enough to understand that and simply just accept it. Even like, I found what helped me is just even quietly saying that to myself. That was a trigger that would actually allow me to step away from the crazy thinking, or just the feelings that I'm not seeing straight, or I'm just feeling out of sorts. Just let it sit.
Yeah.
And it's at times like that where you just sort of return to residing in the quiet that corrects itself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's perfect. It's self-correcting, just quieting our mind. And the fact that we have this built-in GPS system, it's like having a GPS system. Our feelings let us know when we're out to lunch, when we're out of sort. And the anecdote to that is quieting down. Does that make sense?
Peg, I know you had a part two to your question that I don't know if I spoke to, and I think that, you know, what I heard you say was that if you're feeling love and you're pointing it to somebody, is that made up? Yeah. That's such a tricky one, or it has been for me at least, because when we're feeling love, and of course it's like the person it's pointed to, it looks like it's them that's causing it, and it's our experience of with them and so on. But what I've come to see, and I'm not sure if this is helpful, so you got to tell me if it is, but what I've come to see is that seeing love for what it is, which is beyond emotion, it's beyond life, it's you know, to me, that's the intelligence behind everything. It's the loving quality of life. When I personalize it, then I'm adding my thought created interpretation to what I'm experiencing. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to do it and it doesn't feel good, but to know that that's what's going on, it really helps me to see that I'm personalizing that, which is, for better or worse, for lack of a better word, I should say, indifferent to me, love is indifferent. It's not, if it's turned into sentiments or emotions, it's personal. And that doesn't mean, you know, not going to do it. But everyone, I think, has an experience of being caught up in love and then having it not work out and having that blaming love for it in some sad, you know, some degree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, like you can experience that same love giving it to a teddy bear, right? Because you're making up some sort of special, you're making up the bond for the toy, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we want people to be that thing that we want to love. Yeah. That's really, it's a complex place to play, but it's really interesting.
Yeah, sure is. Yeah, here's another Sid quote. Love is a positive feeling. Boom.
Period.
That's it in a nutshell. And that's really who we are at our essence. When I'm not caught up with fears or worries and I'm just present, there is that, like you said, hum. I think somebody talked about a hum. There is that hum that feels very loving. I don't know. It's a hard one to describe. Not for anything in particular or anyone in particular. Yeah. Anybody else want to comment about that?
I love Alan Blood's comment.
I feel deep
love when I
love.
see my blue dog. It's me, not Edward Stark, but it is real. That's great.
Yeah. 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 Feeling deep love.
There's actually
For your
another
dog.
metaphor that Sid loved to talk about, and that was simplicity. And that in simplicity, all complexity is solved. So the little mind trying to figure it out is resolved to reside in complexity. But if we go to the big mind, simplicity resolves it all.
So we have conveniently run over the hour, folks. I hope people aren't delayed, but this has been so wonderful that I didn't want to stop. And I will stay on for anybody who wants to stay, especially, you know, if you're part of mystery school this round. That way, you know, if you have any insights that you want to share, usually we start out at the beginning with insights people have had, but we'll do it at the end now. So stay on if you can, if you'd like to keep talking. But for now, any last things before those of you who need to go want to ask Shenan? Yeah. And we'll have the recording available too. So I'm sure you'll post it on your group, right, Shenan? And I'll
I will, yes.
post on mine. Yeah.
It
Yes.
won't take me long, Lori, to edit and segment and
Great. All right.
job.
Wonderful.
Thanks for hosting this, Lori. Thank you, Shenan.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yeah, great to have you with us, Peg.
Bye for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to say a big thanks. That was an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
Great
Thank
to
you,
meet
Shenan.
you, both of you.
Thank you so much, both of you, Lori, Shenan. That was wonderful, really. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you guys. Thank you all for being here and for inviting me, Lori. I had such a great time.
Yeah. Thank you so much. See you around in the community.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Enjoy your day. We'll see you soon. See you online.